So, you're just starting out with World of Tanks and you immediately want to start off with the best tanks possible without grinding up to the high tiers. Or you're an experienced player that wants to show off its dominance in the low tier battlefront, but don't know what low tier tanks are most capable of doing so? Well, fear not my friends, because my name is Lucky Leopard and in today's top 5 video we're gonna be counting down the top 5 best low tier vehicles in World of Tanks. With low tier meaning tier 1 up until tier 5, so you won't see any tanks higher than tier 5 in this list. And also premium vehicles are excluded from this list as well. So all the vehicles mentioned will be 100% free to unlock right from the tech tree. And just to clarify, the vehicles mentioned in this list won't be ranked on their overall strength level, but instead will be ranked on their tier for tier capabilities. Otherwise this list would be just full of tier 5s only. And that's of course not what we're trying to achieve, since I wanted to make this list as fair and as equal as possible for all the tiers from 1 up until tier 5. So now with all the explanation done, let's go ahead and jump straight into the list. So to kick things off on this list, at the number 5 position we have the Panzer 1C. So for the veterans among my channel, you probably remember that the very first video I posted on this channel was all about the Panzer 1C and how to seal club into it the most effectively, which already kinda gives away the insane tier for tier strength of this little tier 3 German light tank, since in the right matchup this vehicle can literally tear every opponent apart in just seconds with its low penetrating but high damage outputting 7.92mm machine gun. That is very much capable of nearly one-bursting every lower and some equal tiered opponents, with the occasional use of some premium rounds here and there, since as I already said, the standard penetration isn't that good. But that is not all, because remember, this is a light tank and not a particular slow one either, since this little monster can cruise around with a massive 79 kilometers per hour, making it the joint fastest tank in the entire game. And with a horsepower to ton ratio of 22.36, this thing can also reach that top speed without any major struggles. And to top it all off, as the cherry on the cake, this thing has got exceptional armor for a light tank as well. With a 30mm thick frontal hull and turret, this thing can semi-reliable together with some creative angling bounce most of the tier 2 and some of the tier 3 machine guns that it will be facing. And all that combined is mainly the reason why the Panzer 1C is my personal favorite tier 3 tank and truly deserves the number 5 spot on this list. So then, moving on to the number 4 spot, which is claimed by the OI Experimental. So the OI EXP used to be an insanely overpowered tier 5 heavy tank back in the days, because when the Japanese heavy line just got released, it used to be able to travel at a whopping 40 kilometers per hour. And you guys just gotta realize that this thing weighs a massive 100 tons. While having a 1200 horsepower engine on board as well. This meant that the OI Experimental could actually reach that 40 km per hour top speed quite occasionally. And just imagine you driving in your Panzer 4H when you suddenly see a 100-ton Godzilla storming towards you at 40 km per hour. Well, I guess we can say goodbye to your precious hit points after it hits you then. And if having this insane ramming capabilities wasn't enough already, the pre-nerfed version of the OI Experimental also had the option to mount a 100mm gun that had a massive alpha damage of 300 hit points per shot, with a penetration value of 130. So guys, just imagine an insanely fast, decently armored tier 5 tank with a T150 like gun. That basically was the OI Experimental before patch 9.2. And you've guessed it, it really was stupidly overpowered back then. But that was up until patch 9.20, where Wargaming rebalanced the OI Experimental and finally turned it into a more true heavy tank. So in that patch they firstly removed the 100mm gun, which leaves the current OI Experimental only with its 75mm guns. and its 120mm derp gun, which already is a huge step in the right direction. And secondly, Wargaming nerfed its top speed from 40 km per hour all the way down to 20 km per hour, while the engine power and weight remained the same. This top speed change basically prevented the OI Experimental from pretty much being the best rammer in the entire game. And at last they buffed up its frontal armor from 75mm all the way up to 125mm, therefore turning it into a true classic heavy tank just like its bigger brother the OI. But of course the main question is it still OP after the changes in patch 9.20? No, but it still is a very competitive tier 5 heavy tank, and because of the frontal armor buff, it is now one of the thickest armor heavy tanks at whole tier 5. And the only thing holding the OI Experimental back from climbing even further on top of this list is solely its poor top speed and gun selection. But it still remains a great tier 5 heavy tank, and even though it isn't as OP as it used to be, it's still good enough to make its way as a true number 4 spot on this list. So then, moving on to the number 3 spot on this list, which is claimed by an old legend that's still standing strong today. It's the almighty Hetzer. So I bet that everyone here is familiar with the quote "Hetzer's gonna Hetz." And if you're not familiar with it, this quote originated from the pure destructive capabilities of the Hetzer at the tier 4 battlefield, since this small but dangerous tier 4 German tank destroyer possesses the power to mount a big throbbing 105mm derp gun that is capable of one-shotting most equal and lower tiered opponents, with the option to fire those famous filthy heat rounds which pack enough penetration to fly straight through even some tier 6 tanks. And if you manage to hit one of those heat rounds with your very poor accuracy, you will pretty much shave off a significant amount of hit points in one shot. So even if it's a tier 6 that you're shooting at, I bet he's still gonna feel it. Or if your target is too far away to land a decent hit, or if it's too heavily armored for your heat rounds, or if you are just up for a very tasty HP snack on a low armored light tank and your AP damage just doesn't cut it, you can decide to fire HE rounds instead. That will always leave you with about 100 hit points worth of damage, even if you don't manage to penetrate your target, which is very satisfying, especially for a tier 4 tank. And also as a little extra, since the Hetzer is based on the chassis of a Panzer 38T, it has light tank light traverse speed that allows you to quickly turn your gun towards, for example, a sneaky Skoda who is trying to outflank you. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. And also because of its reasonable thick 60mm and well-angled frontal armor, it has no trouble bouncing most equal and lower tiered opponents as well, turning it into a true low tier tank shredding machine. And just because of that, the Hetzer truly deserves the number 3 spot on this list. So then, moving on to the number 2 spot on this list, where we have an annoying, speedy little wasp with a massive stinger, and of course this is no other than the T67. So, unlike most other mentions, the T67 is probably the most noob-unfriendly tank on this list, since this tier 5 American tank destroyer is just like the Panzer 1C, incredibly fast. It has massive top speed of 61 km per hour and with a horsepower to ton ratio of 31.14. which is even better than some of the high tier light tanks. This allows the T67 to move rapidly across the battlefield, claiming advantageous positions first and whittling your enemies down with your crazy 2248 damage per minute, which is caused by its very dangerous 76mm gun with an alpha damage of 115 and a true tank destroyer like penetration value of 128mm on its standard round. And remember that I said that the OI Experimental's 125mm of frontal armor is very good for a tier 5 heavy tank? Well, that's not if you're getting shot by a T67, since this thing has no trouble slicing through the thick 125mm plates of the OI Experimental, which makes the T67 a very dangerous tank indeed, if you know how to play it. And here is where the noob unfriendly part comes in. Because the T-67 has pretty much no armor, which means that you should play it really carefully and never expose yourself for a long period of time, since literally everyone can penetrate you, and especially the derp guns aren't gonna have mercy with you, since the T-67 is very prone to HE ammo. But that doesn't take away that the T-67 is still the second to best low tier tank in the game if you know how to play it, and only because of that it truly deserves the number 2 spot on this list. So now guys, the moment you have probably all been waiting for, the number 1 spot and the best low tier tank in the game is, you've probably guessed it, it's the KV-1. So to start off with, in contradiction with the T-67, the KV-1 actually is the most noob-friendly low-tier tank in the entire game that you can get your hands on for free. And that is mainly because the KV-1 is pretty much the complete heavy tank package, where you as the player, softly said, only need to press your W key and click your mouse at the enemies while doing so if you're top tier. And that is mainly because it is incredibly well armored for its tier, with 75mm of armor at the front and the sides of the hull, and 70mm of armor at the rear of the hull, which allows it to increase the effectiveness of its side to a point when even some tier 7s start to struggle to get through the KV-1's well-angled side. And of course, this complete heavy tank package is also very well armored at the turret, with 110mm of armor at the front, sides and rear of the turret, which is pretty much enough to stop shells from most lower tiered and some equal tier tanks without any angling. And if the armor isn't enough already, it goes 14 km per hour faster than the other leading tier 5 heavy tanks like the OY Experimental and the Churchill 1. And to top it all off, it has a very decent 85mm top gun with a very healthy alpha damage and penetration values. And all that combined with a 4.79 second reload time, which allows you to rapidly pick apart your enemies while they bounce shot after shot of your very thick frontal armor. So yes, indeed, the KV-1 not only sounds like, but also is pretty much the wet dream of every low tier heavy tank player. So my advice, if you are new to the game and you want a very strong, easy to play, low tier tank, go for the KV-1 and you won't be disappointed. And that is why the KV-1 finishes this list off as the number 1 spot and the best low tier tank in World of Tanks. So guys, that was pretty much it for today's top 5 videos. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, please consider dropping a like. I would highly appreciate it. Also, if you're new to the channel and you like my videos, make sure to smack that subscribe button so you will stay up to date with all my future content. And also, what tank would you have picked for your top 5 best low tier tanks? Make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And at last, there were a total of 4 people who've already seen this video 24 hours before it popped up on YouTube. So if you would like that as well, together with a lot of other exclusive bonus and behind the scene footage, then the only thing you have to do is joining the Patreon army to unlock all that and much more. I'll leave a link to my Patreon page in the outro of this video so you can check it out. But for now, all that's left for me to say is have an awesome day, and I'll catch you guys later.